You are already acting. Every smile you force, every confident word you rehearse, every version of yourself you perform for the world. None of it is fake. It's a blueprint, the dangerous truth. The man you pretend to be is watching you, waiting to replace you. Most people stop at imitation. The few who win, they cross the line between performance and identity. This is not about self-improvement. It's about self-creation. If you can master the mask, you can become it. And once you do, there is no going back to who you were. Let me start by dismantling a belief that quietly sabotages most people in this room. You've been told that pretending is weakness, that if you act in a way that doesn't feel natural, you're being inauthentic. But look closer at your own life. You already perform. When you walk into a room and straighten your posture, when you choose your words more carefully around certain people, when you suppress doubt just long enough to get through a conversation, you are already wearing a mask. The difference between you and the person you admire is not that they are more real. It is that they chose their mask deliberately while you wear yours unconsciously. Every identity you've ever respected began as an act. Confidence was once forced. Discipline once felt unnatural. Even power itself at the beginning feels like a costume that doesn't quite fit. But here is what most people fail to understand. The mask is not deception. It is design. It is a blueprint for the person you are constructing. When you decide to act like the man you want to become, you are not lying to the world. You are signaling to your mind that this is the standard you will now live by. The danger lies not in pretending, but in stopping too soon. Most people try it once or twice. They stand taller for a day, speak with more certainty for a moment, then retreat the instant they feel discomfort. And in that retreat, they reinforce their old identity. They tell themselves, that's not really me. But of course it isn't yet. You abandon the process before the transformation has time to take root. Understand this. Your mind is constantly observing your behavior, taking notes on who you believe you are. It does not care about your intentions or your hidden doubts. It only responds to what you repeatedly do. When you consistently step into that stronger version of yourself, even when it feels unnatural, something begins to shift. The resistance you feel starts to weaken. The act becomes smoother, less forced, and slowly, almost invisibly, the mask begins to fuse with your identity. But this requires a certain ruthlessness. You must be willing to endure the discomfort of feeling like an imposter. You must accept the tension between who you are and who you are becoming. Most people avoid this tension. They retreat to familiarity, to comfort, to the safety of their old self. But the ones who transform lean into it. They understand that discomfort is not a signal to stop. It is proof that the process is working. So instead of asking yourself whether it feels natural, ask a more dangerous question. Does this behavior align with the man I intend to become? If the answer is yes, then you persist regardless of how awkward it feels, regardless of how much resistance you encounter, because with enough repetition, the unnatural becomes natural, the forced becomes fluid, and the mask becomes indistinguishable from the man beneath it. What you call pretending is not falsehood. It is the first stage of creation. Now, once you understand that the mask is your blueprint, the next step is far less glamorous and far more powerful. It comes down to repetition, not inspiration, not bursts of motivation, not the rare moment when you feel unstoppable. Repetition is what shapes you. It is what quietly, almost mechanically, turns an act into an identity. Most people underestimate this because repetition feels ordinary. It lacks drama. You don't wake up one day and suddenly feel transformed. Instead, you do something small again and again until your mind begins to accept it as truth. This is how conditioning works. Your brain is constantly recording patterns. It doesn't sit there judging whether your behavior is authentic or fake. It simply observes what you do consistently and concludes, this is who you are. Think about it. If you repeatedly hesitate, avoid, and second-guess yourself, your mind builds a clear picture. You are uncertain, you are passive, you are someone who retreats. But if you begin to act with intention, speaking up, holding eye contact, making decisions without constant validation, and you do it consistently, something subtle begins to happen. the mind adapts. It starts to close the gap between what feels like an act and what feels like your natural state. This is why inconsistency is so dangerous. You cannot step into a stronger version of yourself one day and then disappear back into your old patterns the next. Every time you retreat, you reinforce the identity you claim you want to escape. You confuse your own mind. You send mixed signals, and the mind always defaults to what is most familiar, not what is most desirable. The individuals who transform understand this principle at a deeper level. They remove the question of how do I feel today? From the equation, they build systems of behavior that operate regardless of mood. They know that emotion is unreliable, but repetition is not, so they show up again and again and again until the behavior becomes automatic. There is also a hidden advantage here. As you repeat a behavior, the resistance you once felt begins to fade. What once required effort becomes easier, then eventually effortless. The mind, in its efficiency, starts to conserve energy by turning repeated actions into habits. And once something becomes a habit, it no longer feels like you are forcing it. It feels like you. This is the moment most people are waiting for, the moment when it feels natural. But they misunderstand the order. They think something must feel natural before they can do it. In reality, it becomes natural because you have done it so many times that your mind has no choice but to accept it. So you don't wait for confidence to appear. You repeat confident actions until confidence becomes your baseline. You don't wait for discipline to feel comfortable. You repeat disciplined behavior until it defines you. Over time, your identity reshapes itself around your actions, not the other way around. And when this clicks, you realize something almost unsettling. You are far less fixed than you thought. You are programmable. Train the pattern long enough, and the pattern becomes you. Repetition is not just practice. It is identity formation in motion. At this point, something else begins to interfere with the process, something far more subtle than lack of effort. It is emotion, the invisible force that quietly dictates most people's decisions. You feel uncertain, so you hesitate. You feel intimidated, so you shrink. You feel unmotivated, so you stop. And without realizing it, you hand control of your transformation over to something that was never designed to lead you. Understand this clearly. Emotion is reactive. It is shaped by your past experiences, your fears, your insecurities. It is not a reliable guide for where you are trying to go. In fact, it often pulls you backward toward what is familiar and safe. The man you are becoming cannot afford to be governed by that. When you begin to act in alignment with a stronger identity, there will be a mismatch. Your actions will say one thing. Your emotions will say another. You may feel like an imposter. You may feel resistance, doubt, even anxiety. Most people interpret this as a signal to stop. They think, this isn't me. But what they are really experiencing is the friction of growth. The key is not to eliminate emotion. That would be impossible. The key is to detach from it, to observe it without obeying it. Imagine your emotions as background noise, present, sometimes loud, but not in control of your actions. When you can create that distance, you gain something rare, the ability to choose your behavior independent of how you feel in the moment. This is where discipline becomes a form of power, not the rigid, punishing version people often imagine, but a quiet consistency. You do what aligns with your future self, regardless of whether it feels comfortable. You speak with clarity even when you feel uncertain. You take action even when hesitation creeps in. You maintain composure even when insecurity tries to surface. Over time, something interesting begins to happen. Your emotions start to adapt to your actions. At first, they resist. They push back, creating discomfort. But as you continue to act with intention, your mind begins to recalibrate. The behaviors that once felt unnatural start to feel familiar. The situations that once triggered anxiety start to lose their intensity. You are, in a sense, retraining your emotional responses, not by fighting them directly, but by refusing to let them dictate your choices. And in doing so, you weaken their hold over you. There is also a deeper layer to this. When you detach from emotion, you become far less predictable. Most people are transparent. They react immediately, revealing their insecurities, their desires, their fears. But when you learn to pause to choose your response rather than default to it, you gain control over how others perceive you. You become composed, measured, deliberate. This is not about becoming cold or unfeeling. It is about becoming selective. You decide when emotion serves you and when it does not. You express it when it strengthens your position, and you contain it when it would undermine you. And once you reach that level of control, your transformation accelerates, because now nothing internal is constantly pulling you off course. You are no longer negotiating with your moods. You are directing your actions with intention. The man you are becoming does not wait to feel ready. He acts, and in acting, he rewrites how he feels. Now, as you begin to act consistently and free yourself from the grip of emotion, something shifts, not just within you, but around you. People start to respond differently, and this is where many underestimate a critical force: perception. You may believe that your private thoughts define you, that your internal struggles are what matter most, but the world does not see your thoughts. It sees your signals, your posture, your tone, your timing, your restraint. These become the language through which others interpret who you are. And once that interpretation forms, it begins to shape how they treat you. Most people approach this passively. They hope to be understood. They assume others will somehow see their potential, their intentions, their hidden strengths. But perception does not work that way. It is not discovered. It is constructed. Either you shape it deliberately, or it is shaped for you, often in ways that limit you. When you project uncertainty, even subtly, people sense it. They may not consciously analyze it, but they feel it, and they adjust their behavior accordingly. Opportunities shrink, respect weakens, influence disappears. On the other hand, when you project clarity, calmness, and control, something else happens. People begin to defer. They listen more closely. They respond with a different level of seriousness. This is not manipulation in the crude sense. It is alignment. You are bringing your external signals in line with the identity you are building internally. You are making it easier for the world to recognize the version of you that you are becoming. But here is where it becomes even more powerful. The way others perceive you does not just affect how they treat you. It feeds back into your own identity. When people respond to you as if you are confident, capable, and composed, your mind begins to accept that as reality. It reinforces the very transformation you are trying to create. This is why consistency is essential. You cannot present strength one moment and uncertainty the next. That inconsistency fractures perception. It creates doubt in others, and eventually in yourself. But when your signals are steady, when your behavior aligns with a clear identity, perception stabilizes. It becomes solid, predictable, and in your favor. There is also an element of restraint here that few understand. Power is not in constant expression. It is in control. The ability to say less, to move with intention, to avoid over-explaining yourself. These create a sense of presence. People begin to fill in the gaps with their own assumptions, often elevating you beyond what you explicitly show. You are, in a sense, allowing others to participate in constructing your image, but you are guiding the direction. You give them just enough to form a strong impression while maintaining control over the narrative. And as this process continues, something remarkable happens. The external perception you've cultivated begins to solidify internally. The line between how others see you and how you see yourself starts to disappear. The identity becomes unified. At that point, you are no longer hoping to be recognized. You are no longer waiting for validation. You have shaped the lens through which the world views you, and in doing so, you have shaped your own reality. Control the signals, and you control the story people believe about you. But even with all of this in place, the mask, the repetition, the control over emotion, the shaping of perception, there is one obstacle that quietly undermines everything. It is your attachment to who you used to be. Most people attempt transformation while keeping one foot anchored in their past. They want growth, but not at the cost of comfort. They want a new identity, but without releasing the habits, the excuses, the patterns that define the old one. And this creates a conflict. You cannot build something new on a foundation. You refuse to alter. The version of you that exists right now was not created by accident. It was formed through repetition, through choices, reactions, routines. Your current identity is the sum of what you have tolerated. And if you continue to tolerate the same behaviors, no amount of intention will change the outcome. This is where a certain level of ruthlessness becomes necessary. Not toward others, but toward your own patterns. You have to be willing to look at your habits without sentimentality. The tendency to procrastinate, the need for validation, the comfort in avoiding risk. These are not harmless traits. They are structures holding your current identity in place. And here is the uncomfortable truth. Many of these patterns feel familiar because they have protected you in the past. They have allowed you to avoid failure, rejection, discomfort. But what once protected you is now limiting you. If you continue to preserve those patterns, you preserve the version of yourself you are trying to outgrow. So the process becomes one of elimination as much as creation. You do not just add new behaviors. You remove the ones that contradict them. You cut off the habits that weaken your discipline. You distance yourself from environments that reinforce your old mindset. You become selective about what you allow to influence you. This can feel extreme at first. There is a sense of loss that comes with it. You are not just changing actions. You are dismantling a familiar version of yourself. And the mind resists this. It clings to what it knows, even if it is limiting. It will try to convince you to keep certain habits, to hold on to certain excuses, to stay within a range that feels safe. But transformation does not negotiate. It demands clarity. Either you continue feeding the old identity, or you starve it. There is no middle ground that leads to real change. As you begin to remove these patterns, something else becomes clear. The space they once occupied does not remain empty. It is replaced by the behaviors you have been intentionally repeating. Discipline strengthens, focus sharpens, your standards rise, not because you are forcing them, but because you have removed what was lowering them. There is also a shift in how you see yourself. When you consistently reject behaviors that no longer align with your future, you send a powerful message to your mind. That version of you is no longer acceptable. And over time, it begins to fade, not instantly, but steadily. You stop identifying with the old excuses. You stop justifying the same patterns. They feel foreign, almost incompatible with who you are becoming. And this is when the transformation gains momentum, because now there is less internal conflict. You are no longer trying to move forward while dragging your past behind you. You have cut the weight. To become someone new, you must be willing to let the old version of you disappear without resistance. If you've followed this process, if you've worn the mask with intention, repeated the behaviors without compromise, detached from emotion, shaped perception, and cut away the remnants of your past, something begins to happen that is almost difficult to notice at first. The tension that once defined your transformation starts to dissolve. In the beginning, everything felt deliberate. You had to think about how to stand, how to speak, how to respond. There was effort behind every action, a sense that you were stepping into something unfamiliar, almost like you were borrowing a version of yourself that didn't fully belong to you yet. And that feeling, that subtle discomfort, made you question whether it would ever become natural. But what you didn't see in those early stages was the accumulation taking place beneath the surface. Every repeated action, every moment you chose discipline over comfort, every time you held your frame, despite internal resistance, it was all adding up. Quietly, consistently, your mind was adjusting. And then gradually something shifts. You walk into a room and you don't have to remind yourself to stand with presence. It's already there. You speak, and the words come with clarity, without the hesitation that once slowed you down. You make decisions without overanalyzing, without that familiar pull toward doubt. The behaviors that once felt like effort now feel automatic. This is the moment most people are chasing, but few reach because they abandon the process too early. They never stay long enough for the transition to occur. They remain stuck in the phase where everything feels forced, and they mistake that discomfort for failure. But for those who persist, the line between acting and being disappears. You are no longer performing confidence. You are confident. You are no longer trying to be disciplined. You operate that way by default. The identity you once had to consciously step into becomes your baseline. And at that point, something even more powerful happens. You stop thinking about yourself so much. In the early stages, your focus is internal. You are aware of your actions, your posture, your tone. You are managing yourself constantly. But as the transformation solidifies, that self-consciousness fades. Your attention shifts outward toward opportunities, toward strategy, toward influence. You are no longer consumed by who you are becoming, because you have already become it. There is a quiet confidence in this stage. It is not loud or performative. It does not need validation. It is simply there, embedded in how you move, how you think, how you respond. Others can sense it, even if they cannot explain it. They recognize a level of certainty that feels grounded, not forced. And this is where your power stabilizes, because it is no longer dependent on effort. It does not fluctuate based on mood or circumstance. It is integrated. You have, in essence, rewritten yourself, not through a single breakthrough moment, but through a series of deliberate choices sustained over time. The mask you once wore is no longer separate from you. It has merged with your identity. And when that happens, there's no return to who you were, not because you can't, but because it no longer feels like you. What began as an act has now become your nature. This isn't about becoming better. It's about becoming undeniable. There is a version of you that already exists in your mind, sharper, calmer, more powerful. But right now, he's just an idea, a performance you hesitate to fully embody. The truth is brutal. No one becomes extraordinary by waiting to feel ready. You must step into that identity before it feels real. Speak like him, move like him, decide like him. At first, it will feel forced. Then, it will feel familiar. And finally, it will become you. The question is not, is this me? The question is, how long will you delay becoming him? And now you see it clearly. This was never about pretending. It was about transforming. Every step you take, every action you repeat, every moment you choose discipline over comfort, you are stepping closer to that version of yourself you once thought was out of reach.